You are listening to part 2 of a 2-part review on Queen of Shadows. Please be advised that this episode contains spoilers for the Throne of Glass series up to and including Queen of Shadows. Additionally, this episode contains adult content that may be disturbing to some people. Listener discretion is advised, and please take care.
Hi, and thanks for joining us today. I'm your host, Jacqueline.
And I'm your host, Nicole. You're listening to the first season of Perfictionist.
So today we're going to deviate away from the format that we have approached these last three episodes now. 3, 4? This is the fourth one? Anyways, it doesn't matter. We're abandoning the format, which we went through each character's story and then throughout the whole book, and then jumped to another character and went through their story, and so on and so forth. Because the characters in part 2 of Queen of Shadows, their stories overlap and intermingle so much, we are just going to go through the book, the story, in a linear fashion and just kind of touch down on all the characters as we go through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we're discussing the part 2 of Queen of Shadows, which is called Queen of Light.
Yes.
And we start off with Aelin, Idian, and Kale on a search for Hellfire.
Mm-hmm.
So this is reminding me of, again, Game of Thrones. I don't know if it's called Hellfire or Wildfire.
Yeah, Wildfire. Mm-hmm.
But I'm assuming it's very much the same thing, a very explosive, fiery liquid.
Yeah. And in tunnels far below the city, which seems to be a good and popular place, a popular choice for all of this crazy fire that people like to store.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I mean, I guess where else do you store volatile fire?
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. Certainly not in a random room or in the sky.
So in order to find this Hellfire, they delve very, very deep down in to like an ancient part of the tunnel system or the like sewer system under the city. And they come across something very interesting and very informational. They find a temple and learn that the king may be trying to raise Erwin, who is a Velg king. So far we know there are like Velg henchmen sorts, like lower Velg. We have Velg princes who we know from the Callers. So Dorian has a Velg prince, Keltane has a Velg prince, and now we are hearing about Velg king, which we have heard about Velg king before because we know they created the word keys.
Yes.
So obviously they are incredibly powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And we thought that they had been killed by Elena and Gavin, but it turns out they weren't able to kill them. They were only able to contain them.
Mm-hmm. That is extremely too bad.
Very unfortunate.
Yes. Oh dear. This is a massive point, like plot point. Let's go back and look at the enemies or the big bad guys we have had so far in this whole series. So the King of Adarlan, he's obviously number one, Mr. Big Bad. There is suggestion that Maeve could be kind of a bad person in this series. We don't know too much about that, but we know she certainly isn't like a hero in this series. And then now there's this Erwin, which all of a sudden it sort of seems like the King of Adarlan is all of a sudden a minute concern in comparison to this Erwin fella.
Yeah, it sounds like he's just like something they need to get past in order to get to the real
problem.
Big bad.
Yeah.
So that was, and everyone thought that Elena, and Gavin had actually killed the Valg. I think the story goes that like 2 of them were banished because there's 3 of them. 2 of them were banished, and then they thought the last one was killed. But to find out that they had kind of been, specifically Aelin, had been lied to about the history of what was going on, which is so important because it clearly has to do with everything that's happening with the word keys since they created them. So these ghosts that tend to visit Aelin from time to time don't seem to be being very truthful.
No, they are withholding certain information and only giving it to Aelin in pieces, frustratingly small pieces, reminding me of someone else in another series who we will again touch down in a future episode. But there must be a reason behind this madness.
There must be. And on the plus side, they were able to get the Hellfire. So they got some bad news about a potential massive threat, but they got the Hellfire, which I guess we didn't even explain why they were going for the Hellfire. Big news, everyone. They're going to blow up one of the towers and release magic. I mean, that's a plan anyways.
Yes.
And Hellfire seems like a good way to get that done.
Yeah, it's like a bomb. So
yeah.
Makes sense.
If you're going to blow up a clock tower, a bomb.
Yeah,
that's a good way to go about that.
Yeah. No.
Definitely not.
But so Lorcan tells Aelin that he will give her this ring, which is actually protection against the Valg, and it's called Athrel's Ring, in exchange for the Amulet of Orinth.
So he's taken this ring from Maeve because it's the ring that Aelin used to bargain for Rowan's life, or I guess his blood oath.
Yeah.
And so Lorcan took the ring from Maeve and now is using it as a bargaining chip because it has this protection against Valg, which could come in handy for those fighting Valg. And at this point, Aelin's like, I don't have the amulet, or like, I can't remember exactly what she says, but an exchange does not happen at this point. No. She doesn't have the amulet on her. And it's good to note that that's kind of what he's after and willing to give, because he's hunting the word keys. So it makes sense that he would want the amulet.
Yeah. Yeah. Meanwhile, it's just chaotic. Things are just starting to really blow up at this point.
Yeah, it's
Evangeline, she shows up at Aelin's apartment and she says, Lysandra's been kidnapped because she's like special. She's a shapeshifter. And so she's been kidnapped and she's being taken to Morath for her abilities.
Yeah. And that's very upsetting news for everybody. I feel like Lysandra's becoming a bit of a fan favorite. Well, I don't know if she's a fan favorite. She's becoming my favorite. And I'm extending that to everyone.
Yeah. I feel probably pretty accurate.
Yeah, so it's really upsetting that she's being taken, and Evangeline comes in clutch, going to Aelin for some support. Yeah. But switching gears and taking a look at what's happening at Morath, we have Manon and Elide. They are forming a bit of an alliance. So last time we kind of checked in with them, we were talking about how Manon could smell that Elide had some witch blood. So basically she's like, you have witch blood in you. Whose side are you on? Are you on the witch's side? Are you on the human side? You have to pick a side. And if you pick to be a part of like my clan or my group, then I will protect you. But you need to do something for me in exchange. You need to find out about the experiments that are going on with this witch breeding that we had talked about.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's interesting, their relationship that's forming.
It is interesting because Manon is not a warm, motherly type person.
No. But
she seems to want to take Elide kind of under her wing, so to speak. And Elide, she kind of starts off as, she's very afraid for good reasons. I mean, I would be in her position. How horrifying would it be to be in Morath because I don't think we've mentioned this before, but she's got like a deformed leg because of the abuse that she has been subjected to by her uncle.
Mm-hmm.
So she's pretty vulnerable because she's kind of hobbling around and she can't walk very well.
Mm-hmm. And she's chained on top of it. Like her legs
Yeah.
are literally shackled together.
And the last thing you want to show in front of witches is weakness. This is the
Mm-hmm.
vibe I get from reading
Yeah.
about them. So it's kind of cool that Manon, the heir of the Blackbeak clan, the wing leader, is sort of turning her eye to a protective kind of relationship towards Elide.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's protective, but a little harsh at the same time. Like she's like, you can sleep in my chambers, but she like just sets up like this little like mat for her on the floor of hay, which
Mm-hmm.
is, I don't know, a little sad
It's
to have
sad,
Eli just
but
like sitting on this hay bale in the corner.
it
But I
is
mean, at least she's
sad.
by the fire.
She's by the fire, but she's also, she knows when she's in there that nothing too bad can maybe happen to her. Like she's not at
Hmm.
anybody's mercy except for Manon's, which
Yeah.
in her position, that's the place. In a place where bad is everywhere, that's probably the best spot for her at that point.
Hmm. No, definitely. So Alide does discover what is happening, and she discovers like it's a very horrific what is happening to the witches. The coven who had been chosen has already given birth once and are pregnant again already. And it hasn't been that long in the story. So this pregnancy situation is happening a lot faster than I was expecting.
Yes.
And I don't think we really fully understand what the product is, but
No.
we do know that whatever is happening is horrific to the witches because they're literally chained to the beds and begging to be set free.
Hmm.
So this is not something like I think when they went into it, they felt like an honor to be doing this. Like the clan that ended up getting chosen volunteered
Hmm.
and were really proud to be like serving Morath in this way and the king. But then whatever's happened to them down there, it's caused them to beg, and they are witches.
Hmm.
For witches to beg.
It's bad.
Mhm. What did
But
you think of that scene?
I was very disturbed by that. And
Mhm.
it's kind of one of those things where your imagine takes you to places where it might be worse than what's actually going on. But then I thought, well, no, I think it is that bad. It is
Mhm.
as bad as it can be. So I think something that's been suggested, I feel like it's been suggested at this point, is that witchlings are really treasured. And so
Mhm.
probably when they went into that, it was like with that kind of in the back of their minds. But this isn't a witchling situation.
No, they're not actually having witchlings. They're having something entirely different, is my understanding. But the witchlings are very treasured because it's very uncommon for a witch to carry a witchling to term.
Yeah, and not have it be a stillborn.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, poor witches. I mean, you got to feel for them, even though they can be really brutal. That they're still, I was going to say they're still human. They're not human at all. They're witches, but you know,
Yeah. Yeah. There's some reasons to feel compassion for them.
mhm, definitely.
So a little bit more about Caltaine. She is, as it turns out, she is quite a strong inside. She's
Hmm.
very feisty inside. She has, we learn, that she's killed the Valg that's inside of her, but she's been pretending to still be under Valg control. So that's amazing. So it
It is
turns out,
so.
yeah, it turns out she has killed this Valg with her shadow fire. So you have to wonder, like, how and like why was she able to kill the Valg herself?
Mhm.
I wonder what this means for anyone else who may come under the influence of Valg infestation. And again, why can she use shadow fire when there's no magic?
It's very interesting how she's able to use the shadow fire, but it's the whole, her whole character is impressing me more and more. She's able to use a shadow fire somehow, which is a mystery in and of itself. But just the fact that she kind of had the will to battle the Valg, but then continue to act like she wasn't in control. Because we know she's being abused, most likely by Parrington, and yet she just sits there and takes it and acts like she's not really present and that he's still in complete control of her, and just goes about doing whatever she's told to do because she's under possession. The strength you would have to continue to let yourself be treated that way. Like, she must have some powerful endgame to let herself go through that.
Yeah, she's got, I guess, a very feisty spirit. I actually find it interesting because we don't really hear much about Kaltane except for these little bits and pieces. And really, I think her story it's pretty tragic. She's had a really bad time throughout this whole series, but she obviously has such strength of character that it would be interesting to hear more about her.
Yes, I think that a novella from her perspective, if not a whole novel from her perspective, would be incredible.
Yeah, me too.
That'd be something I would read in a heartbeat.
Yeah, same.
So Aelin and her crew, I can't remember what they call. It's not called her crew, but like Aelin and her group, there's a name for her. They hear about
her court.
Her court. Thank you. It sounds way more official. So Aelin and her court find out about a transfer that's happening. So the king is bringing Lysandra up to meet the witches, in which they will trade off the carriage that is encasing Lysandra, and then she'll go get sent off to Morath, most likely to be like her shape-shifting abilities to be used to like be studied on. And they decide to intervene. They're like, if we are going to get Lysandra back, this is going to be the time to do that. And there's a lot that happens in this scene, but one thing that's really adorable, and I just have to mention, is we see Abraxas from the point of view of one of the court members. I can't remember exactly who it was who saw Abraxas. Maybe Nezrin or something, when she was like up in the tree scouting somebody. And they're just like, we're looking over and they're like, there's this wyvern just rolling around in the flowers. And it's just like the most adorable thing. It's like this massive like thing's about to go down. Everything's all tense and like boom, boom. And then there's just this wyvern like
in the flowers. I love him so
like
much.
Sniffing them. You just like picture him kind of like sniffing in a.
I know, he's so precious. Like, seriously. Oh my gosh. Protect him at all costs.
I just needed to mention that because it was a very important moment in the book, in my opinion.
Yes. Those moments are always super important.
But so down to the actual trade.
Yeah, down to the actual trade. So during this trade-off, Manon and Dorian meet. And remember, Dorian's still under the control of this Valk prince. But Manon has these eyes, and they are like a golden color. And they are the eyes of a Valk king. They are the same eyes that a Valk king possesses. So the Valg inside of Dorian kind of recoils when he sees these eyes. And because of that, Dorian is able to break free of the Valg control and actually use his body as his own for the first time in a long time. And he's actually able to speak directly to Manon.
Yeah, there's so many questions about this scene that I had, like about Manon, because we know witches are created from a hybrid or a mixture of Valg and Fae. They're like a breeding mixture. So does that mean that Manon, the Valg part, was a Valg king? I don't know. I just
seems to suggest
it seems
that.
Obvious.
Yeah.
At the same time, it just kind of like brought up that question. Is she special in some way because she is bred from a king? And then also the whole Dorian thing, obviously so incredibly important.
Yes.
We get to see him break free for the first time. Yeah. And it seems like you are possessed by a Valg. This is your first time breaking free, and you choose to use that power to flirt with a witch. I mean, why not? Don't ask for help.
Dorian, he's such an insatiable flirt. He's like, I must flirt with no. But it's like, Their interaction was cool, I thought. Kind of cool. But yeah, it's too bad he couldn't be like screaming like, someone help me.
Yeah. I mean, I guess there was no one around to help him, so maybe he just realized that.
Yeah. Okay. He doesn't know the others are there. So it's, yeah. But yeah, that's kind of funny. But
it was a very cool moment.
Kale, though, he sees Dorian and loses all faculties of the mind.
Yeah.
And decides to break from the plan and go after Dorian. It was not like a logical thing. It was a move he made from the heart. But of course, he ends up getting stopped by Manon and her 13.
Yeah.
And
not
they
the
end up
greatest people to be stopped by.
That would be a very scary group to be opposed to. Which it ends up having, like, Manon and Aelin end up having this pretty wicked fight. And
I mean, it was worth it.
It was really cool. And it was so funny, like, how there was so mutual respect for each other as they were fighting.
Yeah, it's a fight scene you have to read yourself. Yeah. There's so much going on in it. But the mutual respect is, I think, the most relevant thing that comes out of the fight. The way that they kind of interact with each other during the fight, it's really cool to see.
And the end of the fight ends with Aelin kind of saving Manon's life. So now Manon owes a life debt to Aelin, which is a really strange position for Manon Blackbeak to have to be in, considering what she is and who she's working for.
Yeah.
But that's kind of...
Considering the brutality of witches, I'm a little surprised that life debt
is a thing.
Owing is a thing. It's kind of like, I'm just surprised that they would honor something like that, given how brutal they are. It doesn't seem like honor would be high up on their...
No, I don't know that honor necessarily is, but that does seem like they have some pretty strict rules that they never deviate from, and life debt seems to be one of those things. But it is interesting because it's actually not a great thing to have to abide by if you're trying to be strategic in war. But so there's a little bit of a weakness there maybe for the witches, but yeah.
It's a good thing though.
Yes.
During the battle between the witches and Aelin and her court, Rowan actually ended up getting very seriously injured. Yes. So much so that they don't have time to get him back to Rifthold for medical attention. So they end up going to Nesrin's family's farm, which just so happens to be where Fleetfoot has been living this whole time.
Yes. Yay, Fleetfoot.
Yay.
Aww.
So it was really cute to get to know that the dog has not been forgotten. Sarah hasn't left him out. He's still thriving, living in the countryside.
It's a she.
Oh, I'm so sorry. She has been thriving, living in the countryside.
Yeah.
And Rowan's able to get the healing he needs so that he's all good.
Yeah. And then, ironically, Kale, even though now we've seen Dorian can break free of the Valk control. And now Kale's all like, well, Aelin, you were right. We should just put an end to his suffering. And it's like, Kale, oh my God.
He's just like always getting it wrong.
Yeah.
This is like just the entire book is just like watch Kale get it wrong every time.
Yeah.
But I was
Kale, if you have an instinct, ignore it because you're wrong.
Yeah. I was very proud of his growth though, and admitting that he was wrong. He should have admitted it a long time ago. But then maybe it's good he didn't, because maybe things would have turned out differently.
Yes.
So perhaps it was all for a good reason. But I think this is the starting of Kale's character arc taking a more mature spin or twist or trajectory.
Yeah, for sure. It is definitely a turning point, I would say.
So we have Lysandra thanking Aelin, but Aelin's not going to stop at just saving Lysandra. She's going to do something not even better, but just as important, because she saved her life from Morath, but she also saved her life in the sense that she has paid off all her debts. So Lysandra and Evangeline are officially free, completely free people. They can do whatever they want now. And I'm just like, Oh, their friendship was probably my favorite thing in this entire book,
Yeah.
which is saying a lot because there's a lot of really great things that happen in this book.
Oh, yeah.
But their friendship, it's so strong.
It is. And they went from basically hating each other to basically becoming almost like a sisterly bond.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I would say the same thing. Lysandra and Aelin's friendship is my favorite thing in this whole book, too.
Mm-hmm.
So they have had actually very similar paths when you compare their path. And I think that Aelin even mentioned that when she was going by Selena earlier on.
Mm-hmm.
Lysandra, I think they were kind of pitted against each other on purpose for whatever mind games, self-serving games C. Robin had going on for himself back then. But even back then, did you think back then that Lysandra was just kind of like set there to just kind of irritate, like for plot purposes, like in jealousy and stuff? Or did you see her becoming a larger part of the story, and did you see this friendship coming?
I did not see this friendship coming from a mile away. It came out of left field for me.
Mm-hmm.
It was completely not something. I completely forgot about Lysandra as a character.
Mm-hmm.
She's mentioned so subtly in Assassin's Blade that I didn't think we'd ever hear about her again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, same. Same.
Oh, I do have to say, though, in regards to Robin and kind of pitting the girls against each other, he's a very clever man. So I wonder if he knew, if they were friends, that they would team up and become this powerhouse, and that he pitted them against each other to stop that.
Well, I think the thing with Robin was that he was essentially trying to isolate Selena from everybody except for him as a form of control.
Yeah.
So
it might not have been quite so planned.
I mean, it might have been that, but yeah, I mean, from his point of view, really, what could Lysandra do? Because she was owned by her madam.
True.
And really, what could Selena do? But now that they're free and they are becoming friends, I would wonder, like, did Robin know about Lysandra's shape-shifting abilities? And even, would it even matter? Because the magic was essentially gone, right? Or is essentially gone.
Yeah, I think he did know, because I'm pretty sure the reason the king captured her in the first place is because it said in his will that she had shape-shifting abilities.
Okay.
I don't know how he knew, because, well, I guess when she was first picked up, magic was still active. So that makes sense.
It does.
So Manon, having a life debt, not wanting to have it for very long, decides to cash it in right away.
Yeah.
And she knows that Aelin would want to know about Dorian. So she flies into Rifthold and leaves a wonderfully written message of blood on a bunch of walls. I think she writes it all over the city. A message essentially saying he is still in there. I can't remember the exact wording of it, but the message was that Dorian was still inside.
Yeah.
You could potentially save him.
Yeah.
And Aelin does see it. And just in time.
Yeah. Lucky. Sort of. So, meanwhile, while Manon has been away from Morath, Alide is captured. And, I mean, Manon is like literally the only thing stopping Alide from having horrible things done to her. But anyway, so her uncle Vernon puts her in this dungeon, and his plans are, like any good uncle, is to have her be bred with like an evil vowed demon.
Of course.
Like what else would you do? So certainly not treat your niece with kindness and respect.
No, that would be way too boring.
So,
and Alide knows what this means because she's been spying.
Yeah, so this would be even more horrifying because she knows what's going to happen, or at least she knows it's not good. Yeah.
And the sadness continues because Astrid, who is Manon's second, they've been having quite a tumultuous relationship throughout this book. She was Manon's second and then kind of got kicked down to third and then was kicked out. They've just been really clashing. this whole novel, there's been a lot of conflict between them. And they're also cousins. So there's like the blood bond between them, but also they're part of the same coven and all that. And she tells Manon a secret that she's been keeping for a really long time. And long ago, well, I'm not sure exactly how long ago, but a while ago, because witches live for hundreds of years, Astrid actually had a little liaison with a human hunter, and they fell in love.
Yes.
So she's a witch who actually fell in love.
Yeah, and Manon she's under the impression, she believes, that they are incapable of love. So this is huge. I mean,
Yeah.
if you were in Manon's position, it would almost feel like the world is tilting on its axis, because you'd be like, what?
Yeah. No, I think that's exactly what was happening to her.
Yeah.
Like her whole world, everything she understands about being a witch is being called into question. And in the end, Astrid ends up becoming pregnant, which, as we discussed, is a miracle in itself. So she was really excited about this. But unfortunately, as with many witches, she ends up miscarrying the witchling. So Manon's grandma, the loving matron that she is, holds this against Astrid. She blames Astrid for this. She ends up discarding the witchling before Astrid even gets a chance to hold the baby, and ends up beating and branding Astrid, leaving her for dead. And it's like winter. She just like literally throws her beaten, bruised body into a snowbank and leaves her.
Oh, my goodness.
Obviously, Manon knows her grandma isn't this warm, cuddly person, but this is beyond anything Manon could have ever imagined.
Yeah. So Astrid, I've really admired in this story. I don't know how you felt about her character. It felt like suddenly she was like, there is a line and I am not crossing it. And all of a sudden it's like, it's making Manon look really bad in our view, in the reader's perspective. But she is indeed making Manon question a lot of things. And to me, it was almost like Manon is trying to stubbornly hold on to what she's been taught and how she's been raised and what her grandma wants. But then as time goes on, it's Astrid and her 13, you can just tell. It's like, this is not cool.
I feel like Astrid and many of the other 13 have already kind of come to a realization about how witches are taught to be. But they've been, specifically Astrid has been quite quiet about it and sort of keeps going on with the way things are, but knows in her heart it's not right. And it's kind of like a moral compass for Manon. And now Manon is starting to understand where her perspective is coming from.
Yeah. 'Cause she had no idea. Like her and Astrid are like basically best friends. And she had no idea that this had happened to her.
Yeah. No, it was a completely heartbreaking moment. I'm pretty sure this is one of the many moments that I had emotional reaction, a few tears probably shed.
I couldn't even think about what had happened to Astrid because now as a mother myself, before I had been a mom, I'd have been like, whoa, that's brutal. But now that I'm a mom, I'm like, oh my God, I can't even think about that. It's too upsetting. Like it's, yeah.
Had to dissociate a little bit from.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Sure. Yeah.
So back in Rifthold, Rowan decides to be a little sneaky himself, taking a playbook from Aylin's, or taking a page from Aylin's playbook. Yeah. And he goes and trades the Amulet of Ornth for the ring, for Ethril's ring. So the Valg protecting ring. So he makes the trade that Lorcan wants, sending Lorcan off. And now they have this protection, which I guess is probably a good trade in some ways. But I mean, it is for a word key. So, I mean,
yeah,
probably not a good trade.
Maybe not the best, but in that moment, what do they need more? They can't really use the word keys for anything right now. But at the same time, like Lorcan seems to be an extremely powerful being. So it's
Yeah.
like, good luck getting it back.
Yeah. So hope you had a plan there, Rowan.
Yeah.
And Aelin and her court devise an epic plan to blow up the clock tower. So this is something that's been building up pretty much the entire book since we found out about the whole clock tower situation. I feel like it's been leading up to the eventual blowing of one of the pillars. And the obvious one would be the clock tower. So this is a twofold plan with Selena as the king's champion, because keep in mind, the king still believes Selena is his champion and is in Wendelin trying to kill the royal family. And
He's
Selena
real behind.
Yeah, he's like a whole book behind. And so the first part of the plan is that Selena is going to capture Kale, who has, ran from the castle and has been working with the rebels, and enter the castle just through the front gates, doo-doo-doo. And the goal is to save Dorian and potentially kill the king. So that's kind of like step one of the plan. However, something unexpected happens. The king, being all-knowing as he is, somehow knows that Selena's Aelin. I'm not even entirely sure when that happened. Do we know when that happened?
No. But at least
did he know the whole time?
I mean, she's kind of claimed her. So when she was fighting at Mistward, Misthaven, is that what it's called? Mistward? Okay. When she was fighting at Mistward and she came into herself as Aelin, and then she was like erupting with fire, I think that made kind of a statement. And if that king has spies, which I'm sure he had loads of spies, word travels, Aelin Galathinius, what's the chances Selena was sent over there to kill the royal family? Yeah. They're going to get reports of what she looks like. And yeah. So.
No, I think you're 100% right that was, it might have even mentioned that that's how we discovered it. So that was kind of one side of the plan.
Yeah, and then meanwhile, Rowan and Aedion are traveling through the sewers with the Hellfire to blow up the tower from the inside. So there's these things called word hounds. And if you remember in previous books, there was always those creepy gargoyles that Selena really didn't like to look at that were on the tower. They come alive and they attack Aedion and Rowan in the sewers. So there you go. The things are coming into place here.
If they are being attacked, they are not able to blow up the tower. So on the surface, we have Kale and Aelin in like the castle with the king, waiting for the tower to blow up so that Aelin can have her magic and actually do what they went to do. But she's not getting her magic because the tower is not blowing up. So they're like, this plan is going sideways very quickly.
Yes.
And in that process, they kind of slip into plan B, and Aelin and Dorian kind of leave the scene and they're fighting each other. Mostly Aelin is trying to get Dorian to come out. Like, she knows he's in there, so she's trying to convince him to kind of fight the Valg inside while she's literally fighting off the Valg in the real world. And Kale's like, I'll take on the king. Like, I will distract him. So they have some pretty intense things going on in the castle while they're being destroyed underground by the word hounds.
Yeah. Meanwhile, so Aelin, and she gives Kale the Eye of Elena for protection. And then Lorcan returns to help Rowan and Aedion because he realized, like, he must have smelled Aedion. So he can smell on him that he's Gavriel's son.
Yeah.
That's lucky because Lorcan, like I said, he's super powerful, and Rowan's powerful too. Even though they don't have their magic in this land, they are Fae, and they have the Fae strength and everything.
Yeah.
So they are able to get past those word hounds and finally blow up the clock tower, and magic is released into the world.
Finally.
Yes.
as magic is released, it's actually the same time that Manon is returning to Morath, and she like feels the magic coming back into her.
Yeah.
And because she's a witch, and witches have their own type of magic, their own
Mm-hmm.
magic style. And when she returns, she realizes that Alide has been taken.
Mm-hmm.
So she starts looking for Alide because she knows if Alide is not in their kind of area, their rooms, then something probably has gone horribly wrong. So
Mm-hmm.
she's searching for her, and she finds her in the dungeons eventually. And Manon and her 13 do everything they can to get Alide out. Like they are fighting as best they can. And they're
Mm-hmm.
witches, so like they're doing a lot, but it's not looking great for them.
No. And then Keltane shows up.
How surprising.
Yeah.
I was very surprised by this. It was
I was
unlikely that that was going to happen, and yet it did.
She decides they're supposed to switch places with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So she can pretend to be Keltane and vice versa. And she gives Alide a sliver of stone, which is a word key that Parrington had put inside of her arm, that she's had in her arm this whole time. So she wraps the stone in some fabric, and then this is really important. So she wraps it in some fabric, and the fabric that she wraps it in is actually, if you remember in Throne of Glass, I think it was, it's the cloak, is it Throne of Glass? Yeah.
I think Crown of Midnight.
No, yeah, you're right. It's Crown of Midnight. So in Crown of Midnight, there was a scene where Selena was put in the dungeons and Keltane was down there. And in an act of kindness, she gives Keltane her cloak.
Mm-hmm.
So Keltane took a scrap from that cloak and wrapped the word key in it, and then gave it to Alide. And then she told Alide to like find Selena Sardothian and to give her the stone, as well
Mm-hmm.
as to punish them all.
Yeah. So it was so incredible. Like, this is like peak Keltane's character. She went from being this very snooty, kind of gold digging character who her and Selena hated each other the second they met. And she ends up being the one who, without even realizing, kind of turns the tides in some ways. Because she sacrifices herself so Alide can get free, giving Alide the second word key. So we know that, well, I mean, I guess Lorcan now has the one key. But now if Alide can find Selena, then she will have another word key, which would completely change everything.
It's
like if she
huge.
could have two.
Mm-hmm. So,
and just like to sacrifice herself, because she doesn't just stop at like pretending to be Alide so Alide could get free. She uses her shadow fire to blow up Morath.
mm-hmm.
Like, she ultimately sacrifices herself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel like at that point, in some ways, she probably is like a lot of the people possessed by the Valg, where it's like, even though she fought off the Valg, she probably was just like, I'm just ready for some peace.
The way that she's described is like she's a shadow of herself. Like she's almost like a wraith.
Yeah.
So it's sort of feels inevitable for her to do that, but she does it in a way that actually helps turn the tide. So it's very important. And, you know, if they were to write history books, I feel like she should definitely be in those history books, you know?
Yeah. She made her life very meaningful for someone at the beginning who seemed very much not going to be written into history. She really made her life count.
Absolutely. That's a really good way of putting it. So back to Rifthold. Aelin has slipped whilst fighting Dorian, and well, the Valg that's inside of him. She slips the ring, the protection ring, Athril, to Dorian so he can fight back against the Valg. And at this point, this is like, there's so many simultaneous things happening. So like the magic has come back. Here's the ring, right?
Yeah.
So I guess Dorian is able to overtake the Valg. I can't remember that how that happened.
I think so. And I think they specifically made it so they were on some sort of a bridge at noon when the sun's the highest, because that's when power's the strongest or something. Or maybe
That's
just
when
Aylin's power
I was going to say
is the
that's definitely when
strongest.
Aylin's power is the strongest. Yes.
So while they are fighting, so Dorian the Valg inside Dorian and Aelin are fighting, and then the king comes up. So clearly Chaol did not win his fight with the king. And now the king has come up, and he is all three of them are sort of fighting. And he confesses that he has been possessed by a Valg the whole time. So from going back when he went to Morath to find a word key, he ended up finding Erwin's tomb and has been with Parrington. And him and Parrington have been possessed since that moment. So for a very long time, since before Dorian was even born, they've been possessed. And the king has been trying to fight the Valg inside of him, and stopping the magic was his way to try and save people, because he knew the Valg were after people with magic, and he knew his son had magic, so he wanted to save his son specifically. So he created these pillars to stop magic so that his son wouldn't know he had magic, so that the Valg would never go after him if they were to come back and return it, which they clearly are, that he was possessed by one. And he didn't realize when he made the magical spells for the pillars using his own blood, it meant his bloodline was omit from the spells. So the whole point was to save Dorian from being targeted by a Valg, and he made Dorian the prime target, since he was the only one who could actually use his magic, which is really unfortunate.
He tried so hard.
He tried so hard. And we also find out he went to Aelin as a child, because we talked about that scene where he went and visited Aelin, and we're talking about mostly the interaction between Aelin and Dorian. But during that, he caused Aelin for her magic to erupt, which kind of set this whole thing into motion. And we're thinking he's being evil. He wanted to, prove that she had magic so that they could kill her. Really, the opposite was true. He wanted her to get so mad that she killed him using the fire, because he knew that was the only way to destroy the Valg inside of him, destroying himself in the process. So he was willing to sacrifice himself to kind of put an end to all of it, but it didn't work the way he wanted to.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Dorian does not believe his father. It's kind of too much has happened, and he's so angry with everything that he's not really buying the story fully.
Do you buy it?
I think I do.
I buy it.
Yeah.
Because I was kind of thinking in previous books, I was like, how can this king be so evil? Yes, there's conquering, but it sort of feels like it's beyond that. And I mean, this could be the explanation, because he was possessed by a Valg, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think I believe him. Because
I think so,
why
too.
else would he come up with this story?
Well, and we always say how Dorian is so different from his father.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess his brother's a little psychopath, but there could be other reasons for that. But it seems so odd that such a kind, caring, compassionate person came from such evil.
It does happen, though.
It does.
It does happen. Sure. Dorian really, he ends up killing the king with his magic and shattering this glass castle that Aelin has always despised and felt so uneasy about.
Yeah.
But there's a problem, because when you shatter a big ass castle, that's glass, there's going to be fallout from that, the shards.
People literal falling of
So Aelin, though, because magic is released, she's able to stop the glass from basically falling into the city and killing everybody with a wall of fire. And so the glass and the fire meet, and then she melts it into a wall.
Which is really lucky, because that glass was heading straight for Nazrin. So it was going to envelop her and completely destroy her. But it gets made into a wall first.
Yeah.
And Aelin actually takes the blame for destroying the castle and for killing the king, because she knows that it's just too much for Dorian to kind of take that burden. Like, he can't even believe what he's just done.
Yeah.
And she doesn't want him to have to face other people with that.
I can't even imagine Dorian at this stage in time. He's just got his body back and now he's killed his father. And what a crazy time.
He's been through so much in a very, very short period of time for someone who's lived a very luxurious life up until
sheltered
now.
life. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
So we still have our tunnel friends down there. The Hellfire has been released and they're trying to book it out.
They end up getting kind of saved by a this would be so cool to see in like a movie or a show. So earlier on in the book, I think it was Aedion might have been telling Lysandra about these things called ghost leopards. And Lysandra was really interested to hear about these ghost leopards. Well, lo and behold, as Aedion and Rowan are fighting for their lives against the Valg, a ghost leopard comes out and just flattens the Valg, like just destroys them. And it's Lysandra.
Yes. This was my favorite moment of the entire book.
Yes.
So Lysandra had been sent out of the city with Evangeline for safety. And she actually decides to get out of the carriage before Magic is even back. So she doesn't know if their plan's going to work. She doesn't know if Magic is coming back. She's going as just her human self. And she's like, I'm just a human. What can I do? But I have to do something.
I have to try. Yeah.
Just that moment where she decides to get out of the carriage, I was like, oh my goodness. She's like, I can't let my friends fight for me.
She's so brave.
So brave.
Yeah, I huge respect for her. She's quickly becoming one of my favorite characters.
Yeah. In this story, she was my absolute favorite.
Yeah.
But then Magic does return and we get this epic moment of her swooping in.
Yeah.
Or leaping in, I guess.
In ghost leopard form, in a really feared, sort of almost legendary animal. So cool. So during the fight with the king, Chaol was blasted with this magic, this dark magic that the Valg has. And it ended up paralyzing him from the waist down.
Yeah.
So that's, poor Chaol.
It's really, really sad.
Yeah.
I mean, luckily he had the Eye of Elena with him, because I believe it is the kind of blow that should have killed him. But because of the protection he was under, he was able to survive it. And then with Rowan's help, using some healing magic, he was able to kind of limit the damage slightly, but he was still left paralyzed from the waist down, which is a big deal for someone like Chaol, who is very physical. And I think finds
completely devastating. Yeah. Dorian is declared king after all of this kerfuffle. This minor kerfuffle of the glass castle collapsing and everything exploding, stuff going all crazy, kings being killed. Anyways, never mind that. Dorian's king now. So he's to stay in Rifthold as king. Chaol's declared the new hand of the king. Nezrin becomes the new captain of the guard, because obviously Chaol can't do that whilst he's paralyzed. He is then commanded to go to the southern continent, which is where Torre Chesme is, which is this renowned healing place of healing where these healers go, which we actually heard about in Assassin's Blade. So he's also supposed to try to form an alliance with the southern continent to help aid their cause.
Yeah, so he's being sent kind of on two folds, one by Dorian to be healed and one by Aelin to be an advocate for the cause. So they're all banding together.
They are. And then Aelin and her court, including Fleetfoot, will travel back to Terrasen. At least that's the plan. And Aelin realizes that Rowan smells like Terrasen. And that scent is pine and snow.
I found that very notable and led me to think, because I had already had thoughts about how scent is connected to the personality of the character, And after reading this, I'm like, what if it's more than just the personality of the character and has more to do with their mate? And we know that Rowan has had another mate, and I don't know a lot about fated mates, so I don't know. Like you said, I think that you can have more than one fated mate in some universes, potentially.
I don't know about this universe. I am given to believe that in this world that Sarah has built, the way that Rowan has spoken about his mate seems like they're only given one.
Mm. Yeah, so I wonder if, like, I don't know how it, I feel like there's something between them that's more than just like your average connection. Maybe it has to do with their
Their
other connection
Karen
that they,
bond.
yeah. But I'm just wondering if scents are connected to your soulmate, I guess we can call it, because the Carinum is more of a soulmate.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that he smells like pine and snow, and her home is pine and snow, and your home is where you're meant to be. There's got to be something there.
Says
Or
a
I'm just a
lot.
loony bin.
I feel like it says a lot, something to definitely pay attention to. Like we said, all of these little hints that we are given, they are important. So it's definitely something not to disregard, I would think.
Mm-hmm. I love that detail.
I do too.
And as always, Sarah kills it with the ending. And the last line of Queen of Shadows is, "At long last, Aelin, Ash River, Galathinius was home."
Beautiful.
It's just like, oh, such a heart-hidden end line.
Yeah. Do you think that her sense of identity has evolved since Assassin's Blade and Throne of Glass?
I think she's the same person, but has evolved. I think that her character has remained true to who she is. It's not like she's completely changed like character, but she's definitely grown from who she is. I think she's much more controlled, much more analytical, and seems to be more about thinking through plans. I'm not saying she didn't have those aspects of her character before, but I think we've seen growth as she's aged.
Yeah.
She was a bit more quick to
She was a bit
fire.
more impulsive before. Yeah.
Exactly.
She's way more calculated now. And she's always, like you said, she's always been pretty calculated, especially given her age.
Mm-hmm.
But even more so now, for sure.
Yeah. I think she's matured, but has stayed true to who she is as a person, and the events that she's experienced she's taken those in, and she's kind of changed because of those as well. We've seen a lot of different people meeting. Do you think there's any upcoming romances that were being hinted at in Queen of Shadows, or not necessarily even hinted at, but like put before us that we should be aware of?
I don't know if we should be aware of it, but I thought when they said that Kael and Nezrin should go to Torre Chesme together, and so they're kind of embarking on this big trip together, I kind of thought maybe they're, because they did have some romantic, well, I don't know if it wasn't like they fell in love or anything previously, but I kind of wondered if something would be reignited between them and maybe move into something deeper.
Yeah.
I really hope that Aelin and Rowan, continue to develop their relationship. And I think it would be interesting to know if there is something more to that scent of pine and snow
Yeah.
that
And
more than we know at this point.
I feel like at this point they're a bit like they had that awkward moment on the roof, and I feel like they've gotten over that at this point. We didn't talk about all the details, but
No.
they have gotten over that and are more friendly again, and much more, I guess, friends again at this point, where it kind of got a little icy there for a moment, but it didn't last too long. So I feel like we're kind of back to where we were almost at the beginning, where like she was so happy to see him and they were like really bonded in a non-romantic sense. But will it grow?
Yeah. Also, Dorian and Manon. That was, I was like, there are sparks there. Like, he felt the sparks while he was possessed.
I mean, those are pretty strong sparks if you're getting them under possession. So I feel like there's like at least 3 potential romances that could blossom in the coming books.
Same.
that is everything for Queen of Shadows. We hope that you enjoyed what we had to say.
Yes, thanks for joining us today. On next week's episode, we'll move into the next installment of the series, which is Empire of Storms. We hope to see you there.
Bye for now.
Bye.